I'm very pleased to welcome Sally Marshall this morning. Sally is a social enterprise advisor, magazine publisher, a performance and accountability coach, and in a previous life was a business manager in the House of Commons, where she worked in the Department for Information Services. Just before when Sally came on this morning, we were just talking about the content of her talk this morning, and I'm very interested to know more about what she's going to say this morning. So this title of her talk is Fitness and Finance, Know Your Numbers. So I'm going to hand over now to Sally Marshall and let her take it away. If everybody could be on mute, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. Thank you. So, fitness and finance, know your numbers. And I'm sure most of you know all your personal numbers, but do you know the numbers in your business? And in my experience, most people answer no to that. So just before we talk about that, I think I'll just give you a little bit of my background and why I do this. So I used to work in the House of Commons. 25 years spent in the House of Commons, not working with members, I hasten to add, on the permanent staff. And I ended up being the business manager, having worked my way through from a secretary on a select committee or two select committees, was a PA, so got involved in all sorts of different things. Moved into finance, which is where the numbers bit comes from. So in the department of the clerk, which is the bit that runs all the procedural things, so runs the chamber itself and all the select committees, managed select committee travel, which you probably see in the papers once a year when they publish all the numbers. So in that role, I managed a budget of around 60 million, which is quite a substantial budget to manage, and kept me very busy, as I'm sure you can imagine. And then I became a business manager, which means different things to different people, but it was a big promotion to a management role in the Department for Information Services, working for John Pullinger, who at the time was the librarian. He went back to the Office of National Statistics as the national statistician for the UK. So an amazing mentor to have, and that's where all of this began, really, working for him. So at that point, I had a smaller budget, a £20 million budget, but that was only a very small part of my job. He wanted a balanced scorecard, which I didn't know what that was, but I soon learnt. Designed a balanced scorecard, which the directors in that department used at their monthly meetings, and I gather has since been copied by my colleagues in other departments and is now used across the house. So then I took early retirement. And somebody said to me, you've got all this knowledge and experience, why don't you use it? And to be honest, I hadn't realised I'd got all these transferable skills and that not everybody knew what I do. And I think we all take that for granted. You assume that people know what you do, but actually they don't. So I started working with businesses and sharing my knowledge and experience, and realised that actually it's all exactly the same. It's just the numbers on the spreadsheet are different. So most small businesses work in hundreds and thousands, and I was used to working in millions. But other than that, it's just a few zeros on the spreadsheet. And somebody said to me, if you want to be a key person of influence, you need to write a book. To which I replied, people like me don't write books, which is the most ridiculous thing to say. So the first book was Delegate to Elevate, which is based on the program that I teach. And for many business owners, they're good at what they do, they're technicians, but they don't have the business skills and they don't have the network. So Delegate to Elevate goes through a process looking at their vision, the goals, what you want to achieve, how you're going to do that, and building your team and delegating, because when you're employed, you have people to do all these things. You have an account, accounts department and an HR department and all these different things, an IT man. When you set up on your own, you have to do all of that, or think you have to do all of that. Actually, you don't. But learning to delegate is a huge skill, and the numbers is part of that. Most of us have never done accounts. Why would we? So possibly a bookkeeper is one of the first people you need to have on your team, not necessarily as an employee, but maybe as a freelancer or, through your accountant. And then I wrote a second book, Know Your Numbers, which is based on the balanced scorecard. So what it is, why you need it, how you do it, and what you do with it once you've got it. I took it back to basics. John had been to Harvard and he knows the guys that wrote the balanced scorecard books, which are very academic, way above anything that I would want to do. I had the books on my desk, but I'm not sure I read very many pages of them. So my version of it is a simplified version, which we can all understand and hopefully use. So this is a magazine that I published. And the magazine came about because we all good at what we do, but we don't have that network of people and we don't have the knowledge. So the magazine is a way of sharing information and promoting each other. I have a page in the magazine. The magazine is not about me, but I do have a business coaching page in it. And the rest of it is sharing information, sort of similar to the workshops really. Articles to give you a taste of things that perhaps you haven't come across before or perhaps you need to know about, with links to the people that can help you. So that's proving quite successful as an extra string to my bow. I'm not a publisher, as you just heard, but I project manage it, and that's how I think of it. So if anybody's interested in having a look, steeryourbusiness.com. It's an online digital magazine as well as in print, and you can turn the pages on the website and read it as you would a magazine. So coming back to the numbers, KPIs, key performance indicators. I always say to people, what are the numbers that tell you that your business is a success or not? The numbers that you use need to tell you a story. And when I took on that job in the House of Commons, the girl before me is a statistician, and there were pages and pages and spreadsheets of numbers, most of which didn't tell you anything. They were numbers for the sake of numbers. And we crossed a lot of them out and went back to basics. So we had a lot less indicators, but they told us a lot more about what was happening across the business. So you don't need to keep, numbers for the sake of keeping numbers. You need to focus on the key numbers, as it says, key performance indicators that tell you actually what is happening in your business. And I can give you an example of that. This week, I've been working on some strategic recovery consultancy work with a charity. And we had a meeting and they talked for quite a long time about what they do and how they do it and the people that they serve and all that sort of thing. And then they sent us the budget for the coming 12 months. And I kept looking at this budget last night thinking I must be looking at this wrong. And actually they've got all these ideas of things they want to do and they've got staff costs in there, but there's a shortfall of nearly £100,000. And that was the one thing that they didn't tell us in the meeting. And when I sent an email this morning saying, I don't really understand, your budget has a massive shortfall, and they said, you've just hit the nail on the head. That's what we need to focus on. But it's the last thing they're talking about. But it should be the first. So those numbers are key. And, if your income and expenditure are not matching, or more income and less expenditure, then you've got a problem and you need to know about it. And you need to know about it pretty quickly so you can do something. So a balanced scorecard looks at your numbers in 4 specific areas. So it looks at your finances, and it looks at your customers, but it also looks at your internal processes. So that could be how quickly you respond to customers or inquiries, or how quickly you deliver products or services. And also the training and development. So not only of you, but of your staff. Are they up to speed? Are they being upskilled? Are they doing mandatory training that they need to do? And do you know that everybody has done what you think they've done? Have they done those courses or certificates or whatever they need to do? So we're going to look at each one of these in turn. And the numbers for each one of these will be different for every business. There's no set way of doing this, and it's a bit trial and error sometimes as to what works for you and what works for your business. So the finances, if you look at finances in the news, they always quote the turnover figure, but the turnover figure is rubbish. It's vanity. You can have a huge turnover, but if your expenses are huge as well, then, there is no profit. So profit is a key figure. To me, profit is more important than turnover. Because if you're making a profit, then you're being successful. So to me, that would be, a key figure that tells you your business is being a success. So in the case of this charity I mentioned, there is no profit. There's a massive loss. So something is very wrong. And that's the figure that they should be focusing on. So percentage of income from different areas of your business, that's quite an interesting one. I've been working with a social enterprise, and before the lockdown, 90% of their income was coming from the trading section of their business, which is fantastic, and it's very unusual as well. Most social enterprises I've come across rely on funding, but actually, wouldn't it be better if you could rely on the trading income to deliver the services you want to deliver, rather than constantly writing bids for funding, never quite sure if you're going to get the money or not? So if you've got different areas of your business, it's quite useful to know how much each area is contributing. If an area is not contributing particularly, is that something you should continue with perhaps? Should you look at that and either change it or maybe not do it at all? Focus on the areas that are contributing the most to your business. And another thing I would look at is your most profitable product or service, because it's very easy to say, this is what I want to do, this is the bit I like doing, but actually you're either not pricing it right, or you're not getting as many customers as you'd like. So it's not a particularly productive or profitable area of your business. One of the businesses I've been working with is a cafe. So they have a popular dishes on the menu, but are they the most profitable? Do they actually make any money? And taking a little bit of time to cost out those various dishes on the menu would then tell them which is the most profitable. And you could do that with products and services as well. How much does it actually cost you to deliver that product or service? Most businesses haven't looked at that and have no idea. They just pluck a number out of the air and think, oh, that sounds about right. But actually, are you making any money? Is it a profitable area or product, service in your business? So I think that the thing about this is, when you start your business, you're very much involved in your business, but as it grows, you need to take that sort of more holistic view and look at the strategy and the trends and the numbers, rather than actually the doing of the business. Leave that to someone else. And that's when all this starts to make sense. You start to see the trends and where the income's coming from, or where the expenses, the costs are going. And that's when life gets interesting, but that's often the bit that business owners don't want to look at. So customers are the key to your business. So you have to have the products and service that they want to buy. So what do your customers think about you and your business? Do you actually ask them? Do you look at the reviews on TripAdvisor and Trustpilot? And this is really important. You could set a target to be 5 stars or 4.5 stars, but do you check and see what your customers are saying about you? Because we all know when customers make negative comments, they're on social media within seconds, and everybody knows that they've had a bad product or a bad service or waited too long on the phone or not had a reply or whatever it might be. So actually keeping an eye on those review or the stars is really important. And you actually learn a lot from the feedback. Don't take the feedback personally, use it constructively. So if somebody says, well, a product wasn't really up to what they expected, then that's an opportunity to go back and look at that product. I did this recently with some garden furniture, which looked quite nice. And when I looked at the reviews, it said, well, after 24 hours, it rusted. Well, that's no good for garden furniture. Why would I go and buy a table and chairs if it's going to rust in 24 hours? Waste of time and money. And it's that sort of feedback that you can improve your products and services if you just take the time to have a look and see what people are saying and respond to them. Don't have that online conversation where somebody's saying something was terrible and you get into an online argument. That's no good for anyone. But take it offline and have that conversation and see how you can put it right. Perhaps replace the article or do something to make that customer feel a bit happier and want to come back and not leave negative comments everywhere. How many customers do you have? How many customers do you want? Do you know how many customers you have? Or how many customers come back? Because, customers can come and buy from you once, but a good loyal customer will come back and buy from you again and again. So do you know how many repeat customers you have? Or how much they spend? And a good example of that is a hairdresser. They have lots of customers and then they find they're too busy. But actually, if they put their prices up, they would lose a few from the bottom, but they would end up with less customers who pay more. So they would actually earn more money from having fewer customers. So sometimes it's not about the number of having a high number of customers. It's about having a few customers who pay good money and value what you do and are loyal and tell their friends, because the best customers are those who are ambassadors and referrers for you. Average spend per customer is a good one for the cafe sort of type business again. Are customers buying, are they buying extra things? So if they come in for a main course, do they have a dessert as well? Do they come back for afternoon tea maybe? Can you upsell to customers so their average spend goes up? It's worth keeping an eye on. If the average spend goes down, why has it gone down? Has the standard of service or the product gone down? Has something happened? What was the trigger for the average spend to go down? And where are your customers coming from? You always hear things about who's your target audience, who's your ideal customer, but actually where are they? Where are they coming from? Because if your customers are on LinkedIn and you're focusing on Facebook, you're missing out on a lot of potential customers. You're leaving money on the table, as they say. So where are your customers coming from? Which social media platforms, perhaps? If you've done sort of leafleting or advertising, are you getting a return on your money? Where are most people seeing you? So for me, networking works massively for me. I do talks and workshops like this. I go, when we're allowed, we go out and about. People know about my magazine. They know what I do. They tend to know me as a person and, recognize my name or my photo. So for me, that personal contact, the networking, meeting people is what brings customers in. Some from social media, and when you're out and about meeting people, they tend to look you up, check you out, which I imagine some of you have done this morning or in the last few days. I've had quite a few people viewing my profile, connecting with me. So it's really important to know where they come from, and also that they check you out on those social media platforms. They check out your website, they see what you do. who else you're associated with. So keeping an eye on that sort of thing as well is really important, and checking, because it changes, social media goes in trends. People are all on one platform for a while and then they all move to a different one. Do you need to follow that, or do you need to stick with what you do? And people get a bit hung up about social media, but you can't be on every platform. So work out which are the best ones for you, where you're more likely to meet your potential customers. And again, you can track the numbers on social media, the engagement, or the number of posts that you do, or responses that you get, or just where they're coming from. Internal processes. This is always one that confuses people, but it's basically the stuff that happens behind the scenes. So how quickly do you answer calls? So in big corporate companies, they might have a target to answer the calls within 2 or 3 rings. You do have to be a bit careful with that though. So if you ring a big company or a call center, you quite often get passed on to their colleague. And one of the reasons they do that is because they have a target to answer your query within, say, 2 minutes. And if it's getting close to the 2 minutes, they pass you on to their colleague because the clock starts again. So they know what the triggers are and they know what the targets are, and they get a bit savvy about it and they pass you around. So if that happens a lot, it's not necessarily that they can't answer your question, it's that they want to beat the targets. So sometimes you might need 2 KPIs to get the information that you want. So it could be how quickly they answer the call, but it could also be linked to the customer review, because people will very quickly leave a review. It's say, I spoke to 5 people and still didn't get an answer to my question. Well, is it because they're not spending enough time talking to you to help you answer that question? The same with emails. People want instant answers these days, and if you don't answer emails reasonably quickly, then they'll just go and find someone else and put their order somewhere else or ask their questions somewhere else. So responding to emails is really quite important. And if you haven't got time to answer emails, then have a PA or an answering service that can answer the emails for you, or automate it in some way, so that people do get a response, even if it's holding a reply or a phone call or something, so that they know that you care. Because at the end of the day, if they're wanting to spend money, they're not going to wait a week for a reply to an email. They probably want to know today or tomorrow if you can help them. And the same with orders. There's nothing more frustrating than ordering something and then waiting weeks for it to appear. If people order something, they want it quite quickly. So keeping an eye on that as well, because if you get a reputation for not sending out your orders very quickly, then they will go and order from your competitors the next time round. So there's lots of things that you can do sort of internally when you start to think about how your business works and how you communicate with your customers, and keep track so that you improve the process all the time. And nobody's business is perfect. There's always room for improvement. So if you're doing something in a certain time scale, how could you improve it? Could you make it better? Could you do it slightly quicker? And that's what your customers are looking for. And training and development. So depending on your business, you might have CPD requirements. Is everybody doing the CPD they need to? Are people being upskilled? So, particularly with IT, there's always training courses that they can go on, personal development courses they can go on. Are you offering your staff and yourself, the best possible way of improving what you offer, improving the service that you offer, just developing you. Maybe a career path for somebody in your business, you can see them doing something more maybe in the future, but actually what skill sets do they need to get them to that level? Are the training courses that they can do? Sometimes there are mandatory things that have to be done. So some things around compliance or fire safety training, first aid training, those sorts of things. Again, you can have that in your balanced scorecard to make sure that everybody is doing what they need to do. Are you sending managers on management courses and leadership courses and that sort of thing? Team training, maybe, do you need to do that once a year? All sorts of things that you can put in there and just keep a track. And the thing about the balanced scorecard is that you can see at a glance where all this is, where you are in your business, and respond to anything that's not on target or not doing what you think it's doing, rather than just going through spreadsheets and reams of papers and emails and stuff to see what's actually happening. And setting targets, what do you actually want to achieve? Where do you want to be? So it might be that profit level, how much profit do you want to make? Or it might be how many customers do you want? Sometimes you can benchmark things. So things like staff turnover in your sector, you can Google that and find the benchmark for that. So what do the best companies have? A low churn maybe of their staff. If you've got a high churn of staff, then that's something that perhaps you need to look at. So again, one of my social enterprises that I work with, they're concerned about their staff and their volunteers because they rely on volunteers and their mental health. Are they overwhelmed with what's been happening? Are they okay? Are they all, if they start to all call in sick, then they can't deliver the service they want to deliver. But there's also that human element of caring about their staff and their volunteers. And how do they need to manage that? So if the churn or the sickness absence starts to go up, that's a reason to start looking at that. Why is that happening? And there might be a very good reason. It might be somebody's gone on long-term sick, perhaps, and you know about that. But there might be an underlying trend happening there that you can pick up early and do something about it. And I think that's particularly relevant at the moment with staff and volunteers and anybody connected with your business. How are they coping mentally with what's happening and getting back out into the workplace? Is there a trend there of people who are nervous or not wanting to be back in the office maybe? I think that's probably the next big thing, isn't it? Everybody getting back into the office. And is there something that you can do to help them to make that easier? So they want to come to work, they want to be there, they feel they're in a safe environment. So taking action, it's all very well having these numbers, and if you don't do anything with them, it's a waste of time. So they do need to be reviewed, I would say monthly or even weekly to start with. And you hear of people who talk to their accountant once a year. Well, 12 months is an awfully long time, particularly at the moment. Look what's happened in the last 12 months. If you last spoke to your accountant this time last year, your business is probably in a very different place to where it was then. So reviewing these things monthly or even weekly, if things are changing very quickly as they have been over the last few months, then a weekly review is a really good thing to do, just get into a habit of doing it. And I should say in the balanced scorecard, I would say pick 3 or 4 KPIs in each of those 4 sectors. So you've got 12 or maybe 16 numbers to look at. That's not a huge amount of numbers. And I tend to track it on, put it on spreadsheets, but then do a summary sheet with charts on the front. So it's very easy to see. It's very visual and you can see instantly whether things are going up or down or whether you need to take some action. And if you do that, you can see very quickly, are you on track? If you are, that's brilliant and you don't need to worry too much about it. If you're not, like the charity, you need to do something and you need to do something quickly. What action are you going to take and who's going to do it? So it's not necessarily you that has to do something. It could be somebody within your team, but somebody needs to take some action and get it back on track, basically. And again, a lot of businesses I come across don't have an action plan. They don't keep a track of the actions, so they don't keep people accountable. So for me, the part of the review would be the areas where action needs to be taken, who's going to do it, and by when. So at the next meeting, you can say, actually, did you do that? What did you do? And can we see the changes in the numbers? Are they starting to go back in the right direction? If they're not, what extra action do we need to take? Because if you don't take any action and the numbers are going in the wrong direction, they will continue going in the wrong direction. Nothing's going to happen unless you do something. Burying your head in the sand, as in the case of the charity, is just going to get worse. It's not going to get better. They're not going to improve their income unless they find another way of generating an income stream or applying for bids or doing something. And somebody needs to do that. So having an action plan as part of this process is really important too. So I hope that makes sense and gives you a bit of an overview on why the numbers are really, really important. Another thing that you could add to that is your risk register, which again, most businesses don't do, but your risk register should mirror what's in your balanced scorecard. So like the HR thing, it would be on the risk register, but what are you putting in place to mitigate the risk so that it reduces the risk? And then hopefully that is reflected in the balanced scorecard that you've put in place, care for your staff or your volunteers, and therefore the absence or the churn is low. So the two should work hand in hand. If anybody wants a template of a very basic, simple balanced scorecard just to get you started, then please let me know. I'm happy to send that out. And I think it's better to start with something, however simple it is, just to get started. And then once you get more of an idea of it, you start to see the trends and you start to want to look into the numbers more and see what's happening. And it gets a bit addictive sometimes. You think, well, actually, now this makes sense because that's happened and that's reflected in another part of the business. And it gets quite fascinating seeing how the business is actually performing rather than just being in it every day and doing. Does that make sense to everybody? I hope it does.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
I'll unmute everybody in a couple of minutes. I just wanted to say thank you very much, Sally. That was a practical and pragmatic masterclass of sort of beautiful, a reminder of the simple things that we should all do in our business. And I shall definitely be buying your book, Know Your Numbers, because I've looked at Balanced Scorecard a couple of times and I've found it overly academic and a bit complex. And so, having people, who can kind of translate it and do the interpretation and bring it down to a level that, us non-academics can understand is incredibly useful. And I'm sort of enthused to read your book, and, I can see how I can get implement a balanced scorecard specifically in my wife's business, which is a retail business, which I think will be hugely valuable for us to be able to look at those important numbers every single month and just get a really good sense of the temperature of the business, like, very easily. So
Yes.
very helpful for me. I got a lot out of that.